This week I read in First Things, February 2024, an article entitled Our Christian Nation by Josh Hawley, the senator. I was delighted to read it. He's evangelical. First Things is dominantly, but not by no means exclusively, a Catholic. It takes articles from atheists to across the board. But Josh Hawley, I've listened to on YouTube, cross-examining people in government, and I like the way he does it. He's very good. But in this article, he starts by referring to Christopher Dawson, who was one of the most insightful academics of the early part of the 20th century. Eliot said he was the best mind on this issue. He wrote about religion and culture. He was Catholic. And if you've never read any of his books, just get one from the library or on Amazon or audiobooks or whatever it is and enjoy. He's got a very good mind and he makes you think in ways that other people don't. The conclusion that Dawson came to at the end of his life was that all great cultures have depended on a common moral order and a common religious ideal. They happen to be foundational to cultures. This, for our culture, of course, was the Bible, and that is now fading. And I would add, virtually unknown to most of the people below the age of 30. Because in North America, the Bible was removed from school in the 1960s. So now we have a biblically illiterate group of students, which really upset the atheist Alan Bloom because he needed the metaphors and they no longer understood them. If you don't understand what I'm saying when I say that the model of education that your children are exposed to has been weighed in the balances and found wanting, you have proved my point for me. Because if that phrase has not brought into your mind a story, you cannot understand your own language anymore. That's where we get to when we refuse history. Chopping down statues is not going to change what happened. It's only going to make us ignorant. I would have understood if they'd said, as for instance, of Jefferson, that he kept slaves. And they should then look at who didn't keep slaves. I mean, they are so ignorant. One feels very sad for them. I was appalled this week to see a statistic which said that when questioned, almost 50% of the students who were chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine shall be free, which is a good, easily chanted chant. But when asked which river, which sea, 50% of them didn't know. They have no idea what they've been sucked into. If it feels right, they do it. Well, our feelings are highly unpredictable and unreliable. You have to be careful where you express your feelings when they are not under control, especially if you value friendship. You can talk about them afterwards in cold blood, so to speak, but be careful. That's what the Bible teaches us. We have to slowly work out the consequences of what we say we believe, and it takes a long while. So I have to teach students who no longer have a meaningful narrative under their lives. No common morality to bind us together is the way Josh Hawley puts it, and I think a very good way of putting it. And he says, look around, you can see the results. Absentee fathers, the biggest problem, especially for the black community in North America, is absentee fathers and divorce, which damages every child. No child has enjoyed it. Anarchic behavior, which we have all the while. In Black Lives Matter, ended up burning down the carefully built-up black businesses. They attacked their own people in their anger and the joy of destruction, which they understood as freedom. It's really a refusal to grow up and be responsible. I mean, I've even seen the bumper sticker, I'm spending my children's inheritance. Obviously, not ashamed of that. Drug abuse, suicide, and physicians killing patients. These are all the products of a post-Judeo-Christian culture, where narcissism and I displace responsibility. Only the personal matters. So Hawley goes on to say that without real understanding of our history, our young are seduced easily by slogans. If it's a good slogan, they'll counsel it. This is not new. Ban the bomb was easy, as long as you didn't go and read history and say the way to preserve peace is to prepare for war. No one's going to invade you if they know they can't win. That does lead to arms races and stalemates, but let's face it, they've kept a modicum of peace between the great powers for a long while now. Whether it will continue, we don't know. The experts who rule us, the political science people, claim that we are all secularists, but that is a lie. We are not all secularists. Time and time again, our speech will betray us as we demand things of our children in their behaviour and the like, which cannot be derived from a purely secular view of the world. Physical facts will not give you moral injunctions, is the bottom line. We are not all secularists, and secularism is a faith. Atheists love to say, I'm rational, I don't have to believe in your God. And then you can push them back until you reach the point where you can say to them, can you prove there is no God? And of course you can't, it's a universal negative. So you are acting on faith too, and you might be wrong, and the consequences might be quite severe. You should think about it. Secularism is a faith, not a rational, neutral political stance. It's a faith, and we should call it that. You are believing that we can live as though there is no God and there'll be no consequences. You can't prove that. And of course, the areas of the university where you're going to find the most people who no longer believe there is no God are the sciences, not theology. But if you do quantum physics or cosmology, you can't look at the data without being awestruck. I mean, the stuff that's coming back from the Webb telescope at the moment, I mean, there are structures in outer space which is supposed to have been derived from chaos that are exquisitely engineered. And one of them is 1.5 billion light years across a spiral. That is stunning. And it's beautiful, too. Look at the pictures from the Webb telescope. They are stunning, and they're not chaos. That's just one example. If you're doing molecular biology, at the heart of every cell in your body, the trillion or so cells you have, are 2 meters of DNA. I mean, that's enough DNA end to end to go a very long way. And in your personal ID number, roughly 3.1 billion letters, there is a basic blueprint. And something we cannot possibly do. God has blueprints laid on top of one another in the same sequences out by one. It's mind-bogglingly unlikely to happen by chance. They both work. So molecular biologists are influenced by the wow factor, and so are the quantum physicists and the astronomers. They know that the world is a wonderful place and incredibly complex. Slowly they work their way through to what that must mean. There is a mind behind the universe, not unreasonable. When Nagel, who had been an atheist philosopher, first had the temerity to say that, he took so much flack. It went on for weeks in Arts and Letters Daily, but he claimed his decision was made on the basis of rationality, and I think it was. So, in this essay, there was one particular phrase that I really loved, or section. Hawley developed the beautiful metaphor of the Bible as the current to keep the moral lights on. It's a lovely metaphor, I think. You've got to have the wires intact between input and output to keep lights on, and that connecting wire is the biblical narrative. It's a lovely metaphor. I'm sure there'll be a few preachers who use it That's an act of inspiration, I think. Even politicians at their best recognize the importance of Christianity. I have a friend who's been running the oldest clinic for the indigent poor in North America in Chicago, and the mayor of Chicago on one occasion came to see the work they'd done in basically reclaiming a whole block of South Side and seeing 60,000 patients a year. And he was honest enough to say, we could not do what you have done. We, the secularists, could not do what you have done. Right on Barack Obama's home patch, but he's never been there, as far as I know. So even the best politicians recognize that Christians have something that the world needs. When peace break needs to be reintroduced into a dysfunctional department, Christianity has the tools to do it. Hawley recognizes that we need to get much better at spelling out the benefits of Christianity. We've sat back and said, oh, well, they'll come round in due course. No, we are supposed to change things. Hopefully you pray every day, thy will be done, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's a job. It's not magic. That's what we have to do. We're called to do that. We haven't been doing it very well. And so Hawley is asking the Christian community to start spelling out the benefits of a Christian ethos. It's not just economic and overtly political areas that need Christian attention. It's the whole of life. One sees that, people. I was in church on Sunday talking to a young man in his early 20s who's just in the last year or so read the Bible for the first time, and he's been so impressed by it. He's going around all the churches to find out where he can best learn more about how to read it. That's happening because when things get bad, people do start thinking about these things. Hawley lists the mistakes Christians have made and the silly ideas they've suggested for politics. But then he comes to attack the position which was the first point for my moving from being uninterested in political things, thinking they'll go wherever they want to go. And he attacks the position of moral neutrality, which is what the liberal elites say is the way we should act, from a morally neutral position. Of course, the position does not exist. Because you cannot get an ought from an is, there is no morally neutral position. It's a nostrum of the liberal elite. It has no foundations whatsoever. Hawley goes all the way back to Aristotle and the purpose of the city to provide a good life, but that bit could be extended, I think, because he lacks a proper account of the fact that we are not ignorant of the good. Our problem is with the will. He hopes that our affections can be foundational. I don't think they can. I think there's something deeper than that. But he brilliantly characterizes the modern liberal theory as having all the warmth and charm of a multinational business corporation. And he quotes Burke, "The state is a partnership in all science, a partnership in all art, a partnership in every virtue and in all perfection. In short, a moral enterprise. The point is that a nation ought to be so constituted. My point is not that a nation ought to be so constituted. My point is that always, for decades, liberals have ignored this reality, living off the Christian culture they inherited but now disdain. But the idea of a procedural republic that merely provides rights for individuals to do as they wish with no reference to shared purpose or meaning is a mirage. What rights we hold and what they amount to involve inescapably moral judgments. Checks and balances cannot function without a common vision. And that common vision, of course, for human rights is that everybody is made in the image of God. And if you really believe that, how can you deform it and defame it? You can think about that for a long while. Whatever else you say about October the 7th, it has that element. Checks and balances cannot function without a common vision. The image of God is essential. I'll finish with something that he doesn't say much about, and I think that's the next thing to add in, and that is the ordering of the goods. the modern world thinks that personal autonomy is first. It's not. It's fourth, at least. So we need to get much better at arguing that autonomy is not the most important thing. The most important thing is to have objective good and evil. So if we'd got that in place, identity politics, victim status, and guilt without possibility of redemption would never have been thinkable. But now they've had some dominant effects. I'm glad to see they're falling apart. I mean, the downfall of Claudine Gay is the downfall of mindless accounts of racism, education, the goods of our society. So go read it. First Things, February 2024. Thank you.